What is up, Ravens Flock? Huge shout out for your support for the 410 Sports Talk. James and Glenn are the best in the business. They're killing it right now. They love talking Raven talk. Make sure you go subscribe to their channel. Let's go Ravens. Big trust.
Welcome everyone to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm Glenn Martin here with my co-host James Haskell. And this episode, I think it's about time we kind of got more into the Ravens are clearly now positioning themselves to be contenders in the AFC for sure, and Super Bowl contenders. I think if you're really kind of paying close attention here, and I think most fans see one possible stumbling block that could hold them back from Super Bowl glory. I think that there's one thing that a portion of the fans say is just not good enough. One portion of the team. So, Jimbo, their points are, and I think what we're going to do here in this video, ladies and gentlemen, is Jimmy is going to try and put some of those worries to rest. I'm going to kind of play that role and play a little devil's advocate to Jimmy's role here. So they're saying that Jimbo, the receiving core is just not good enough when the time comes that they find a team that either, for whatever circumstance, jumps out to an early lead, whether that be a kick return or a fumble on the opening position, and then jumps out to an early quick lead and takes the Ravens out of their typical game script of run heavy and play action and pass off the run game. Or if there's a team that has early success against that run game and forces the Ravens into long third downs with Bateman on IR, he's not coming back. The trade deadline's come and gone, so they can't make a big-time splashy acquisition, even with the trade, there was none really out there outside of, unless you consider Brandon Cooks a splash. There's no one coming to help. So is this group good enough when the time comes, when they're forced to get yards through the air? Is that group good enough, Jimbo?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first thing I want to do before I explain to you guys that this group is absolutely good enough is I want to stop the separation between wide receivers and tight ends. The distinguishment between them two in today's NFL, folks, I'm going to use the S word. It is stupid. Even more stupid in the Ravens offense. A player that catches the football is a player that catches the football. So while I'm going to focus on the wide receivers, please do not forget that Mark Andrews, with a week off, is still second in the league in yards, second in the league in targets, only behind Kelsey, who is, guess what, a tight end that is basically a number one wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs. That's number one. Like, understanding how valuable the tight ends are in this offense is crucial for Lamar Jackson. And not just this offense. Really, I mean, we talked about the Kansas City Chiefs. A lot of teams that are really good football teams also have a really good tight end, right? Mm-hmm. So, but with all that being said, the guys that we're really talking about are, you said Bateman's out, of course. You're talking about Duvernay, you're talking about Demarcus Robinson, you're talking about James Brochet, you're talking about, Tylan Wallace. I mean, a lot of unproven guys, right, that you're depending on to get the job done as pass catchers. But when pass catching in football, playing wide receiver is a position that has codependency. You're codependent on another person that has the ball every single play. And that is the delivery system being the quarterback, right? Like, the quarterback's obviously codependent on offensive line, all these things. But one of the biggest things that I would remind people of, that the same people that are saying Lamar Jackson needs all these receivers are the first ones to also admit that Lamar Jackson is an excellent pocket passer. He's improved since 2019. We've seen in the ways that simple passes, Glenn, the screen passes that are just the quick hitters, the slant passes, the outside the numbers passes, everyone will admit, even the biggest Lamar Jackson homer will say, in your heart of hearts, you knew if that ball was going outside numbers, you held your breath for a second. You knew it, but now you don't. You're much more comfortable with it. Lamar Jackson has improved so much as a passer that I think just saying, oh, his wide receivers aren't good enough, is kind of a weak take. I don't think that there's enough meat on the bone to bear out that proof, right? So I think, and to the other point that I also want to bring up is, you mentioned jumping out to an early lead, right? And what happens how do the Ravens come back? everyone thinks about, if a team gets in the league, then what happens? You start passing, they pin their ears back, and they start coming after your quarterback, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to get to that point. The way I'm going to get to that is through a story. Mike D'Antoni, right? One of the best offensive coaches in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
He's well documented talking about the year that the Houston Rockets lost, and that he should have doubled down on the amount of threes that they were shooting, not done the opposite. So I'm using that point to draw a parallel here. The Ravens were trailing, if I'm not mistaken, against the Bucks on Thursday night, right? 10-3 at half. Am I mistaken on that?
I think you might be right.
The Baltimore Ravens trailed 10-3 at halftime, and then they outscored the Bucks 24-12 in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what's really funny to me? Do you remember how many times Lamar Jackson threw the ball in the first half?
It was like 30 or 32.
Yeah. And how many times he threw the ball in the second half? Wasn't it like 9?
Eight.
Right. Yeah.
Went 8 for 8.
So if you're telling me doubling down on what you do best in running the football isn't the best idea when you're trying to dig your team out of a lead, I think you're simply mistaken, and the proof is in the pudding. So I say all that to say two things. One, football is a team game. While the wide receiver position group matters, there are so many other things that matter and so many other good things that we have that help the wide receivers that should make you less concerned. Number two, I think that there are guys there that have a few intangibles that are important. They're unproven, so they want to prove themselves.
Yep.
They're absolute young guys and trying to show people that they got the dog and they can make it. You got a lot of guys in that room that are mid-round draft picks that are trying to get paid. You also got a guy in DeMarcus Robinson. It's not for nothing. He's made big plays in big moments and gone deep in the playoffs with a team like the Kansas City Chiefs, and I think that counts for something. So my argument is just simply there's enough meat on the bones, and I would have zero concern about the wide receiver group being the reason the Ravens don't make it to absolute glory, right? I have no concern around that. That's my story, Glenn. Sticking to it. What say you?
Well, I guess my question would be, so I think that a big question is, do you think that the Ravens can be stopped outright in their run game when the playoff hits? Because I think there's a large portion of fans that think that when they get to the playoffs, we're going to see a repeat of what we saw when they took on the Chargers the second time, when they took on the Tennessee Titans. They're worried that teams are going to be able to sell out in a different way with a full week of preparation, with maybe even more depending on who you're playing, that with added preparation time, they can slow down the Ravens' rush attack enough to force the Ravens to throw. Do you believe that is, in fact, the case, that they can slow down this rush attack in the playoffs?
Yeah, so I do believe that teams can slow it down in spots. I'm not going to say this rush attack is invincible, but what I will say is that the emphasis in the pass attack for me and my confidence doesn't simply come from this stable of wide receivers or tight ends we got. Lamar Jackson has gotten so much better against the blitz. He's become so much more comfortable throwing the football. And look, it's just like Giannis developing an outside shot. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be Steph Curry, Giannis, right? You don't have to be that because you're so much gifted in another way, in that Lamar Jackson doesn't have to be perfect in the passing game, but he has to be able to keep the other team honest. And you bet your bottom dollar that he can do much more than that. Even with the stable of guys that he has. So if that rushing attack is, kind of slowed down in spots, I think they do enough to say, all right, you're going to sell out. Well, fine. We're going to beat you here, and here enough until you have to adjust. And now we're playing straight up football and we're going to smash you in the mouth again. You know what I mean? I think it's just enough to get them back to that point.
Yeah. And I think that'll be a question. Can our defenses prepared to stop the physicality of the Ravens? And can they do that when it matters most? Because if they can't, then this conversation is a moot point, right? If teams can't stop that Ravens rush attack, it really doesn't matter what you think about their passing game, because like you said, it could look like the second half of the Bucs game where they only throw it 8 times, they rush it near 30, and yet they have just as success in both areas, because they were vastly more successful as far as points in the second half, but Also, throwing it 8 times had more success than throwing it 30 times in the first half. So maybe less is more, at least when it comes to the Ravens offense, and that efficiency is what matters most, and not volume, not anything like that. It's all about, I don't care if you throw it 8 times or 50 times. If you're efficient, that's what matters most. And maybe that's what they're going to kind of hold their hat on. But I do understand the concern and criticism, because I will say this, Jimbo, since Bateman's been out, the offense, the passing game hasn't been hitting on all cylinders. We have seen some misses.
Andrews has also been out for
That's
that
true.
same period of time, and I think that's huge.
Fair. That's fair. That's fair. And some people say that in his absence, the Ravens did kind of unlock a different, a bit of a different aspect of their team, when you consider they had one game in which they had, I think, 12 completed passes and 10 different pass catchers in one game.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and if you also consider the fact that in that same period of time, a lot of times where Bateman was out, Gus was also out. So our best running back was also out, right? So that then compounds it even more. So let's see what happens when Andrews is back, and now you got Charlie Kohler. That's going to be a part of this conversation, and you got Gus coming back strong. All I'm saying is that Ravens fans, like, fear not. Just take a breath, realize that it is a team game, and that if Jimmy Garoppolo can get with throwing dang near 3 passes the entire road to the Super Bowl, Lamar Jackson puts a heck of a lot of more stress on an offense on a defense, without even throwing a pass. So fear not, guys. We'll be just fine. Is my final comment.
Well, I certainly hope you're right, and it will be interesting to see what Charlie Kohler's addition kind of change
6'7",
that might bring.
Right? Is he 6'7" or something?
He's just
Did you see the
another
picture of the tight end group?
It's just nothing but giants. I mean, it looks like a basketball team as much
Well,
as
he was
a football
like,
team.
I mean, it was like boop.
And that's saying something, because Mark Andrews is a big guy, as well as Josh Oliver. I mean, they're all big guys. So it'll be interesting to see what type of different looks that Charlie Kohler can help bring to this offense. But let us know what you guys think. I mean, do you think that the run attack and the efficient passing game that the Ravens are trying to go for is going to be good enough when it matters most? Of course, we could all be saying this. They still have to do, what it takes to make this matter at the end of the year, to get into the playoffs and make this conversation even make any sense. But let us know, do you think this receiving core or this group of pass catchers is going to be good enough to carry the Ravens to where they need to be? Or are they missing too much talent there with the loss of Bateman? And did the Ravens not do enough to address it? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and we'll talk soon. See ya.